What if I told you that the safer your neighborhood becomes, the more money someone loses? In the hidden economy of the private prison industry, your safety is considered a financial threat. They call it the low crime tax, a penalty you pay precisely because crime rates are going down. We are uncovering the contracts that turn human beings into inventory and justice into a profit margin. This is the true face of the prison industrial complex, a machine that eats freedom to print money. From Wall Street boardrooms to state legislations, we're exposing the financial trap of mass incarceration. Imagine a hotel that charges the taxpayers for empty rooms forever. That's the reality we live in. The numbers don't lie. The contracts are real. And the cost is coming out of your pocket. Welcome to the Deep Dives. Let's unmask the industry that profits from your fear.
Every time crime goes down in America, someone loses millions of dollars, and it's not who you think. You might believe that safer streets, fewer arrests, and declining violence would be celebrated across the board. But there's an entire industry that sees your community's safety as a direct threat to their profit margins. Imagine owning a hotel where the government guarantees that 90% of your rooms will be full every single night for 20 years straight. And if nobody checks in, the taxpayers pay you anyway. Sounds like the perfect business model, doesn't it? Zero risk, guaranteed revenue, a license to print money. But here's the twist. The guests in this hotel aren't tourists on vacation. They are American citizens. This is the financial backbone of the private prison industry, a multi-billion-dollar machine that views an empty prison cell not as a sign of progress or rehabilitation, but as a lost revenue stream. Most people think prisons exist solely to punish crime and protect society. But in the United States, corporate contracts have turned human freedom into a tradable commodity on the New York Stock Exchange, incentivizing the incarceration of millions. You've probably never heard of the low crime tax, a hidden penalty you pay when your neighborhood actually becomes safer. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see the criminal justice system, and it might just make you question who really benefits when the prison population grows. The numbers don't lie, and neither do the contracts. Before we pull back the curtain on the exact contracts that bind your tax dollars to incarceration quotas, I need to be honest with you. Videos like this one, the kind that expose the dark intersection of finance, politics, and human lives, often get buried by the algorithm because we're challenging powerful corporate interests. That's where you come in. If this information matters to you, if you believe more people deserve to know how the system really works, then hit that like button and subscribe. We're building a community of financially literate, free-thinking individuals who refuse to stay silent, and your support is what keeps this content alive and reaching others. I also want to hear from you. Do you know if your 401k or pension fund is invested in private prisons? Most people have no idea they're profiting from incarceration. Drop a comment below and let me know if you've ever checked. You might be surprised by what you find. To understand how we got here, we need to rewind to what I call Moment Zero, 1983. This is the year the Corrections Corporation of America, now known as Core Civic, was founded in Nashville, Tennessee. But this wasn't just the birth of a company. It was the moment when millions of lives became line items on corporate balance sheets, when human beings were redefined as revenue generators, when the very concept of freedom was turned into a tradable asset class. Let me paint the picture for you. The 1980s in America were defined by the war on drugs and a political climate that demanded tough-on-crime policies. Sentencing laws became harsher, mandatory minimums were introduced, and the prison population exploded almost overnight. State budgets were breaking under the weight of this expansion. Politicians found themselves in an impossible situation. Their voters wanted more prisons, more punishment, more law and order. But those same voters rejected every tax hike and bond measure needed to actually build those facilities. The money simply wasn't there. And that's when the paradigm shift happened. Privatization. The pitch was seductive in its simplicity. Companies like CCA and later the GEO Group told state governments they could run prisons cheaper, faster, and more efficiently than the public sector ever could. They promised to solve the space problem without burdening taxpayers. On the surface, it seemed like a win-win. But beneath that promise was a dangerous new financial reality. The prisoner was no longer just a person serving time for a crime. The prisoner became an asset class, a unit of production, a guaranteed source of revenue. And the numbers tell the story. CCA's revenues jumped from $14 million in 1986 to $120 million by 1994. This wasn't just solving a capacity crisis. This was the creation of a business model that required, depended on, and actively incentivized mass incarceration. Think about that for a second. When a government runs a prison, an empty bed is a good thing. It means fewer people are committing crimes, fewer families are being torn apart, fewer communities are suffering. But when a corporation runs a prison, an empty bed is a financial liability. It's lost revenue. It's a problem that needs to be solved. And how do you solve that problem? You fill the beds. You lobby for harsher sentencing. You push for policies that criminalize more behavior. You negotiate contracts with occupancy guarantees, legal agreements that require states to keep prisons at least 80 or 90% full, or pay penalties if they don't. This wasn't just a policy shift or a budget solution. This was the transformation of the criminal justice system into a profit-driven machine, one that thrives not on rehabilitation or public safety, but on volume, on keeping people locked up, regardless of whether it serves justice or society. And here's the part that should make your blood run cold. Most of this happened quietly, behind closed doors, in contract negotiations that the public never saw. These weren't campaign promises or ballot initiatives. These were backroom deals between private corporations and state legislators, deals that would shape the lives of millions of Americans for decades to come. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding the history is only the beginning. The real question is, how does this system sustain itself today? How do these companies ensure that the beds stay full, the contracts stay profitable, and the taxpayers keep footing the bill? The answer lies in something most people have never heard of: occupancy quotas and guaranteed minimum payments. And once you see how these contracts are structured, you'll never look at the criminal justice system the same way again. Drop a comment and write, "I see it now," if this is starting to click for you. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because what I'm about to show you is where the entire system reveals its true nature. The question isn't just how this industry was born, it's how they convinced an entire society to accept it. How do you get a free country, built on principles of justice and liberty, to sign contracts that literally profit from keeping people locked up? The answer is brilliant in its deception. You wrap it in the language of efficiency, fiscal responsibility, and public safety. You make it sound like smart government, but the mechanism they use to secure those profits is what I call the trap. And it's hiding in plain sight in something called the Occupancy Guarantee Clause, or as some critics have dubbed it, the lockup quota. Here's how it works, and I need you to pay close attention because this is the engine that drives the entire machine. Private prison companies negotiate contracts with state governments that mandate a minimum occupancy rate, typically between 90 and 100%. Let that sink in for a moment. These contracts legally require the state to keep the prison nearly full at all times. And here's the kicker. If the crime rate drops, if rehabilitation programs work, if fewer people are being arrested and incarcerated, if, in other words, your community becomes safer, the state still has to pay the corporation for those empty beds. You are financially penalized for success. You are punished because your city became safer. Think about the psychology of that for a second. This creates a perverse incentive structure that flips the entire purpose of the criminal justice system on its head. Instead of the goal being rehabilitation, reintegration, and reducing crime, the goal becomes maintaining the population. Filling the beds, keeping the numbers up. Because if you don't, the taxpayers, you, have to write a check to a private corporation for cells that are sitting empty. This isn't theory. This isn't speculation. In 2012, the Corrections Corporation of America sent a letter to 48 state governors across the country with an offer. We will buy your public prisons. We'll take them off your hands, relieve your budget pressure, solve your problems. But there was one condition. The states had to guarantee a 90% occupancy rate for 20 years. 20 years. That's not a short-term solution. That's locking an entire generation into a system that requires mass incarceration to function. It's holding the taxpayer as an economic hostage. And some states took the deal. They signed the contracts. They agreed to the terms. Because in that moment, it looked like a budget win. It looked like they were saving money, cutting costs, being smart with taxpayer dollars. But what they actually did was outsource the decision-making about human freedom to a profit-driven entity with a legal obligation to its shareholders. And those shareholders don't care about justice. They care about quarterly earnings. They care about stock performance. They care about occupancy rates. This is where the transformation becomes complete. This is the point where justice stops being about right and wrong, guilt and innocence, punishment and rehabilitation, and becomes about supply and demand. The prisoner is no longer a person. The prisoner is inventory, a unit in a system designed to generate predictable, contractually obligated revenue. And the most disturbing part? Most people have no idea this is happening. These contracts are negotiated behind closed doors. They're buried in legal language that the average citizen will never read. The terms are not part of campaign ads or public debates. They are the hidden architecture of a system that depends on your ignorance to survive. Now you might be thinking, okay, but surely there are limits, right? Surely someone is watching to make sure this doesn't spiral out of control. And that's where the next layer of the revelation comes in, because the companies didn't stop at contracts. They went further. They started shaping the laws themselves. Comment below and write "This is rigged" if you're starting to see how deep this goes. Now I want to show you what this actually costs. Not in abstract terms, not in theory, but in real dollars coming out of your pocket, out of your community, out of programs that could have changed lives. Because when we talk about the low crime tax, we're not talking about a concept. We're talking about millions of dollars being transferred from you to corporate shareholders simply because your neighborhood got safer. Let me give you two examples that will make this crystal clear. In Colorado, crime rates dropped by 1/3 over the course of a decade. Think about that. Fewer victims, fewer families torn apart, fewer people behind bars. By every reasonable measure, that is success. That is what a functioning society should celebrate. But because of occupancy quotas written into contracts with the Corrections Corporation of America, Colorado taxpayers were forced to pay at least $2 million in a single year for empty prison beds. Let me say that again. They paid for beds that were empty because crime went down. That's not a glitch in the system. That's the system working exactly as designed, and it's not just Colorado. In Arizona, the state signed a contract with Management and Training Corporation that included a 97% occupancy quota. When the state failed to meet that number, again, because there weren't enough people committing crimes to fill the beds, Arizona taxpayers had to write a $3 million check to the company. $3 million, not for services rendered, not for improved outcomes, but for the failure to keep enough human beings locked in cages. Now, I want you to pause and think about what that money could have done. That's funding for schools, that's infrastructure, that's healthcare programs, mental health services, addiction treatment, programs that actually prevent crime instead of profiting from it. That's your tax dollars being siphoned away from your community and handed to a corporation because your community became safer. But here's where it gets even darker, because the financial cost is only the surface. The real cost is systemic, and it's insidious. To avoid these penalties, the system adapts in ways that most people never see. States start shipping prisoners across state lines just to fulfill contract quotas, tearing people away from their families, from their support systems, from any chance of maintaining the connections that might help them reintegrate into society. We see rehabilitation programs being cut or underfunded in private facilities because those programs cost money. And worse, they work. And if they work, people don't come back. They don't reoffend. They don't become what the industry quietly refers to as repeat customers. Yes, you heard that right. In a system where profit depends on volume, recidivism isn't a failure, it's a feature. It's the business model. Studies have shown that private prisons have higher recidivism rates than public ones, and it's not hard to understand why. When your revenue depends on people coming back, you don't invest in the programs that keep them out. You invest in the infrastructure that keeps them in. This is the hidden cost that never shows up on a balance sheet. It's the cost of a justice system that has become financially allergic to a reduction in crime. It's the cost of a society that has allowed the concept of punishment to be outsourced to entities whose entire existence depends on maintaining a steady supply of human beings in cages. And the truly maddening part is that this isn't even the worst of it, because these companies didn't just negotiate contracts and sit back. They got involved in shaping the very laws that determine who goes to prison, for how long, and for what. Drop a comment and write "follow the money" if you're seeing how all of this connects. Now I want to take you behind the curtain, because understanding the contracts and the costs is only part of the story. The real question is, who benefits from all of this? Who profits when crime is treated like a commodity and human beings are turned into line items on a balance sheet? The answer is at the top of the pyramid, and when you follow the money, you'll see a web of influence that connects Wall Street boardrooms to state legislatures to the very laws that determine who goes to prison and for how long. It starts with lobbying, and the numbers are staggering. The private prison industry spends millions of dollars every year to influence legislation at the state and federal level. But this isn't just about writing checks to politicians and hoping for favorable outcomes. This is about direct involvement in the creation of the laws themselves. Enter ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone, and that's by design. ALEC operates largely in the shadows, bringing together corporate lobbyists and state legislators in closed-door sessions to draft what they call model bills. These are pre-written pieces of legislation that lawmakers can take back to their states and introduce almost word for word. And here's the revelation. Many of the toughest, most punitive criminal justice laws in America, 3 strikes laws, truth in sentencing mandates, mandatory minimums, were born in these rooms. These laws weren't crafted by criminologists or public safety experts. They were designed by people with a financial interest in keeping prison populations high and contract quotas met. Think about the psychology of that for a moment. The same corporations that profit from incarceration are sitting at the table, literally writing the laws that determine how many people get locked up, for what offenses, and for how long. This isn't policy. This is product development. And it's been incredibly effective. These model bills have been introduced and passed in state after state, creating a patchwork of legislation that feeds the system from the bottom up. But the power structure doesn't stop with the prison operators. The real money, the institutional capital that sustains this entire machine, comes from the financiers. Major asset management firms, hedge funds, and banks have historically held large stakes in companies like CoreCivic and the GEO Group. These are household names in the investment world, firms managing trillions of dollars, including retirement funds, pension plans, and yes, possibly your 401k. They've profited for years from the steady, predictable returns that come from guaranteed occupancy contracts. Now, some of these institutions have divested under public pressure, and that's important to acknowledge. Activism works. Public awareness matters. But for decades, Wall Street was deeply embedded in the private prison industry, treating incarceration like any other asset class, something to be optimized, scaled, and monetized. And then there's the revolving door, one of the most insidious elements of this entire system. You see former heads of the Federal Bureau of Prisons leaving their government positions and stepping directly into executive roles at the very private prison companies they used to regulate. You see state officials who negotiated contracts on behalf of taxpayers later joining the boards of the corporations on the other side of those deals. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented, verifiable fact. It's a closed loop of influence designed to protect shareholder value, ensure contract renewals, and maintain the flow of public dollars into private hands. And the impact of this power structure isn't abstract. It's real and it's measurable. Every law that increases sentences, every policy that criminalizes more behavior, every decision to cut funding for diversion programs or rehabilitation, these aren't accidents. They are the result of a system where the people making the decisions have a financial incentive to keep the machine running. Lawmakers, lobbyists, banks, corporations, all connected, all benefiting, all working together to sustain a model that depends on your ignorance and your silence to survive. Comment below and write, "I see the system," if this is making sense to you now. Now I want to show you something that might surprise you, because after everything we've uncovered, it would be easy to feel powerless. It would be easy to think that this system is too big, too entrenched, too protected by money and influence to ever change. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The script is flipping. Financial activism is working, and you have more power than you realize. Let me show you what's already happening, because this is where the story starts to shift from exposing the problem to becoming part of the solution. There is a massive and growing movement for divestment, and it's making a real impact. Universities like Columbia and the entire University of California system have sold their shares in private prison companies, sending a clear message that they will not profit from mass incarceration. In 2019, major financial institutions, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, announced they would stop financing the private prison industry. These aren't small players. These are some of the largest banks in the world, and they made these decisions because of public pressure, because people like you demanded accountability, because investors, students, activists, and everyday citizens refused to stay silent. This is proof that collective action works. When enough people shine a light on the hidden connections between their money and this industry, institutions respond. They divest, they distance themselves, they change policy. But this isn't just about what universities and banks are doing. This is about what you can do right now, today, with the financial decisions you have control over. You need to audit your own portfolio, and I know that might sound intimidating, but it's simpler than you think. If you own index funds, and most people do, either directly or through retirement accounts, there's a real chance you own shares in CoreCivic or the GEO Group without even knowing it. Your money could be funding the very system we've been talking about, but you have options. Look for ESG funds. That stands for environmental, social, and governance. Funds that are specifically designed to exclude companies involved in private prisons, weapons manufacturing, fossil fuels, and other industries that conflict with ethical investing principles. More and more asset managers are offering these options because more and more people are demanding them. And if your employer offers a 401k, ask questions. Ask what's in the funds. Ask if there are socially responsible investment options. Make it clear that you care where your money goes. Because when enough people ask those questions, policies change. But individual action is only part of the equation. We also need systemic change. And that means supporting policies that dismantle the financial incentives at the heart of this industry. We need to demand that state and local governments ban occupancy guarantees in any contract with private prison operators. We need legislation that decouples profit from punishment, that makes it illegal to write a contract that financially penalizes a community for becoming safer. Some states have already started moving in this direction, ending their relationships with private prison companies or refusing to renew contracts with occupancy clauses. But this work is far from over, and it requires sustained pressure from an informed public. This is where you come in. This is where your voice, your vote, your financial choices, and your willingness to share information like this becomes part of the resistance. They count on you feeling powerless. They count on this information staying buried, on people not connecting the dots between their tax dollars, their investments, and the system that profits from incarceration. And they're wrong. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand how the machine works, you can start dismantling it. One decision, one conversation, one policy change at a time. The transformation isn't going to happen overnight, but it's already happening. The momentum is building. And the more people who join this movement, the harder it becomes for this industry to operate in the shadows. Drop a comment and write, "I'm taking action," if you're ready to be part of this change. If you've watched this far, you're not just a passive viewer anymore. You're someone who now understands a part of the financial system that most people will never see, a mechanism that operates in the shadows, turning human freedom into a revenue stream and justice into a conflict of interest. You are now part of a small but growing group of people who see the low-crime tax for what it really is, a hidden transfer of wealth from your community to corporate shareholders, a system designed to profit when punishment replaces rehabilitation. And that knowledge changes everything. Because once you see the system, you can never unsee it. If this video opened your eyes, if it made you question things you never questioned before, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, because this is the kind of content we're committed to creating here. Deep dives into the financial and political structures that shape your life without your consent. This channel exists to give you the tools to see through the illusions, to follow the money, and to understand who really benefits from the systems we're told are there to protect us. And if you made it all the way to the end, drop a comment below and write, "I see the system," so I know who the real critical thinkers are. Your engagement tells me this matters to you, and it helps this content reach more people who need to see it. Don't forget to hit the like button too. It makes a bigger difference than you might think in getting videos like this in front of the right audience. Now, if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, if you're ready to understand how other industries manipulate your financial reality in ways you've never imagined, there's a video right here that breaks down the military-industrial complex and the economic incentives behind perpetual conflict. Click it, and I'll see you there.